China's warning to U.S. after warships stand off in disputed waters. Beijing is doubling down on its assertion of total control over the South China Sea, swarming warships and aircraft around a U.S. destroyer as it sailed through international waters at the weekend. "We urge the U.S. side to immediately stop such kind of provocative actions, strictly manage and control its maritime and air military operations so as not to cause any eventuality," a Chinese military spokesman warned. The guided missile destroyer John S. McCain crossed through the South China Sea, passing near the disputed Paracel Islands, on Friday. It's the third such mission since June. The warship's presence is part of Washington's ongoing freedom of navigation campaign to assert what it calls common practice. The post-World War II law of the sea determines the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait to be international waters. This permits the unrestricted movements of any commercial, private or national vessels. Beijing, despite being a signatory to the International Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, is ignoring this. Chinese People's Liberation Army (PLA) Colonel Zhang Nandong told the state-controlled Xinhua news agency that Beijing demanded the U.S. end such blatant navigation hegemony and military provocation that seriously violated China's sovereignty and security interests, and gravely jeopardized peace and stability in the South China Sea. In July, Beijing accused the U.S. of sailing through the world like a bully after the aircraft carriers USS Nimitz and USS Ronald Reagan exercised in the region. Now Zhang has accused Washington of sending its warships to show off its force and severely infringe upon China's sovereignty and security interests. He warned of tougher measures to come, stating Beijing would take all necessary measures to safeguard its national security. Military posturing in the South China Sea has created a very tense situation, the Philippine Armed Forces chief said Tuesday, while in Malaysia, the visiting Chinese foreign minister said the waterway should not be teeming with warships. Speaking to reporters and foreign correspondents in the Philippines during an online forum, General Gilbert Gapay said China's aggressive posturing risks driving other claimants into a conflict in the South China Sea, which Beijing claims nearly all as its own. "It's very tense. The situation has now become more tense because China is conducting its own unilateral exercises. It even fired its own missile," Gapay told the forum, referring to a military drill in August. "It is really a potential flashpoint in this part of the globe." In Malaysia, Foreign Minister Hisham Mudin Hussein hosted his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, where they discussed their own concerns about the waterway, among other issues. "We both agree to maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea with the view that the South China Sea should not be the ground for major power wrestling, teeming with warships," Wang, who also serves as state counselor for the Chinese government, told a news conference after the meeting. "China and ASEAN have the capacity and wisdom as well as a responsibility to maintain peace and equality in the South China Sea," he said, referring to the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations. In a joint press statement, Hisham Mudin and Wang underscored the importance of maintaining peace, security and stability, as well as freedom of navigation and overflight above the South China Sea. They also declared that they would work with ASEAN members to intensify efforts toward an effective and substantive Code of Conduct (COC). For nearly 2 decades, ASEAN members and China have been unable to agree on a COC for claimants in the South China Sea. The two foreign ministers did not tell a select group of reporters, including from state-run news organizations in Malaysia and China, whether they had discussed the fate of 6 Chinese fishing boats or their 60 crew members who were intercepted by the Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency on Friday. The boats were detected in territorial waters off the southeastern coast of Johor State. On Monday, the Chinese government called for a fair investigation into the case. Wang, China's top diplomat, took aim at the U.S. government for its efforts in the disputed waterway, saying the Western superpower was seeking an inter-Pacific NATO along with India, Australia, and Japan. What it pursues is to trumpet the old-fashioned Cold War mentality to start up confrontation among different groups and blocs and to stoke geopolitical competition, he said, responding to a reporter's question. This strategy contravenes the spirit of mutual benefit and win-win that has been pursued by the East Asia cooperation. It impacts the regional cooperation architecture with ASEAN at the center, and it will eventually undermine the prospect of peace and development of East Asia, he said. In this sense, this strategy itself is a big underlying security risk. In September, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told ASEAN members that Washington insisted on the rule of law and respect for sovereignty in the South China Sea. Beijing has pursued aggressive campaigns of coercion and environmental devastation, America's chief diplomat said at the time. Days later, David Stilwell, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, criticized China for forcing nations into making a choice over the South China Sea, noting that Beijing had been building artificial islands and militarizing atolls in territories it claims. In Manila, Gapay pointed at both China and the U.S. for their roles in creating uncertainty in the region. The situation in South China Sea remains volatile and uncertain because of the actions of certain actors in the area, particularly China and the United States. We have seen aggressive action on the part of China, from reclaiming the area to deploying some warships there. Their coast guards are very visible in the area, he said. Gapay spoke out a day after Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana downplayed the South China Sea wrangling as manageable and stable during a Senate budget hearing. The defense chief added that the nation should focus more on internal threats or the local Communist Party. On Tuesday, Gapay also told the journalists that there was virtually no risk that towers and telecommunications equipment being set up by a China-backed company could be used to spy on troops. Philippine company Dito Telecommunity Corp., which is backed by China Telecom, is setting up the towers and systems in military camps in the Philippines. We don't see any security risk. It's very low, and we find it better that they are inside because we could have unannounced inspections. We could inspect them at midnight, Gapay said. The Chinese embassy in Manila did not immediately respond to a Benner News request for comment. Wang, who was in Cambodia before his meeting in Malaysia, traveled to Singapore later on Tuesday. He was scheduled to visit Thailand on Wednesday before heading to Laos.